After our Punisher Warzone episode, it's very clear to me that you have a terrible soft spot for ungodly bad New York accents.
Hey, what can I say? Forget about it or something. I don't know. That reminds me of something, and you jogged my memory here because Punisher Warzone was a fun episode. We kind of went to battle a little bit during our Punisher special, covering all three Punisher movies, and we covered those over on our Patreon, patreon.com/notthatbad, where users can subscribe at any tier to see our monthly specials. They can get a whole range of other things. Why don't you tell them a little bit more about what they get when they join the Not That Bad Patreon?
If you subscribe at any tier, you have access to our whole database of Patreon specials. We'll see what is coming up for Patreon this month, but I think it's going to be super duper.
Super duper indeed, good sir. You get a whole range of things. If you subscribe over a certain tier, you get an exclusive Not That Bad sticker to put on whatever you want to put it on. You can see all of our specials as they come out. You can see a whole range of all of our old monthly specials that we've already released, from Christmas to Halloween to St. Patrick's Day, whatever in between. We hope you enjoy subscribing at any tier if you want to support the show. And you can find links to this as well as all of our social media platforms and all of our broadcasting platforms on our website, notthatbadpod.com. Visit notthatbadpod.com today to check us out on a deeper level.
He stuck the landing, ladies and gentlemen. He stuck the landing. There was a second, not that bad pod.
I am one of your hosts. My name is Connor, aka the Kaiju of Mexican food, known only as Godzilla, and I am joined by my illustrious co-host. No, that's not the long-lost brother of Maria Patillo. That's Mr. Gabe Tice. Gabe, I know you wanted to get into something real quick before we got started today. Did you want to run it down before we got into the details of this movie?
The Writers Guild of America has gone on strike for the first time since 2007 because they are just not getting paid livable wages. Studios have been considering using AI to write their screenplays now so they don't have to deal with us pesky writers and our need to pay rent and feed ourselves. We stand in solidarity with the Writers Guild. It's one of my huge career goals to get into the guild, and that's why I was out picketing the other day at the Universal lot. And if you're in Los Angeles or New York, there are a lot of ways to support the Writers Guild, and we'll be dropping some links in the description below, and you can just join the picket line. They're the most welcoming community, and it was honestly an honor to be able to stand with them in this fight. But if I can segue back to our unsanctioned buffoonery, because this movie shows why you need good screenwriters, why you need to value good writers more than anything.
We are talking about Godzilla from 1998. This movie released to 19% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 32% on Metacritic to go along with the eventual 2.2 on Letterboxd. 2.2, one of the lowest movies we've covered so far. Roger Ebert said about this movie when reviewing it, one must carefully repress intelligent thought while watching such a film. I'm curious before we get into this, since this was my pick today, I don't know anything about your history with Godzilla or this movie in particular. Tell us about your history with this legendary kaiju character and what you know about this movie.
Godzilla's my guy. I want that to be clear off the top. I've been a huge Godzilla fan ever since childhood. I think those Toho movies range from schlocktastic and extremely fun and goofy and entertaining to some of the best monster movies that have ever been produced, certainly in the kaiju genre. So even from childhood, I always had a serious resentment of this film. Even before my brain functioned properly enough to do math and read, I knew that I didn't like this fucking thing. The 1998 Roland Emmerich Godzilla. It's so funny. I thought Vince Vaughn was in this for the longest time. I seriously did. Like going back to rewatch this, I was like, wait, wait. Matthew Broderick is he going to team up with Vince Vaughn or no? Vince Vaughn is not in this movie. I confused Matthew Broderick for Vince Vaughn, and then I realized what happened. Okay, I must have confused this movie with Jurassic Park 2: The Lost World. So usually we do the good, bad, and ugly thing. You guys know our shtick, but we like to change it up for episodes like this. We did this for our Punisher Warzone episode, again, available right now on Patreon. When we know that we're on, let's say, different sides of an opinion, it's really more fun to just kind of break down the movie and see why it worked for one of us and didn't necessarily work for the other. Well, I want to know why you picked this. I want to know why you deem this worthy of defense. And I mean that totally sincerely. I just really struggled to see a way to enjoy this movie because, and maybe we should give people some context, right? This is the first American Godzilla movie, period. It's the first time.
And it took years to actually get to.
I mean, stuck in development,
like 20 years.
Yeah, a bunch of names were attached, and you can go and see a lot of the concepts that were floating around, a lot of the art and treatments. And there were very faithful adaptations that were in the works. There was going to be an adaptation where Godzilla fought another monster named the Griffith, who I think turned out a lot like the Mutos from the 2014 version, a version that is going to come up a lot in this review, I promise you.
Look, honestly, like this is a movie that flares up some passions for people, and I realized that reading through the reviews. Honestly, like, man. So first off, before I get into why I picked this today, I just want to say, like, I'm a huge Godzilla fan as well. Like those original movies, I completely agree with you. You know, they're just so fun to watch, and some of them are even hilarious on accident, but in the best way possible. I am a huge fan of the design of Godzilla through over time, especially as we get to like the 90s Japanese movies, like early and mid 90s movies, like where we start bringing in like Space Godzilla, things like that. I love that stuff. It's Space Godzilla is probably one of my favorite things that they've introduced in this whole world of these kaijus, right? So I'm a big Godzilla guy overall. So with this movie, I have a few things that kind of throw me already. Before even getting into the movie, there are a couple of things that already kind of suckered me. First off, anybody who knows me in my personal life knows I'm a sucker for some good advertising. I'm very interested in advertising. I love when when a movie just goes out and spends a ridiculous amount of money to get people to try to watch it. I'm very intrigued by the movie. Because a lot of movies that do that, it doesn't turn out too well for him. Like looking at it, I mean, Batman Returns was a big one, right? And that was smashed by critics and mostly parents after it came out. Batman Forever was another big one. That was destroyed by critics and viewers. Then we have The Phantom Menace, which came out just after this. That did the same thing. That movie had a huge marketing push before it came out and just crashed and burned. And it seems like so many movies, especially from like mid to late 90s, that just had this huge push for marketing pre-release, just crashed and burned as it came out. And that's so fascinating to me. So I already had a feeling of like, I need to watch this again to give it another shot. But then after I watched it, man, I just couldn't fathom why so many people hated this movie. I saw a 2.2.
Fathom it.
I cannot fathom it.
The mind can't comprehend why somebody would not like. Okay.
Don't get me wrong. There are things in this movie that I think I get why people don't like. There are things that I understand why people don't like it, but seeing a rating of like 2.2 from the general audience that would be rating this movie on Letterboxd, I was completely my mind is blown at a 2.2 for this. I couldn't
Okay.
believe it.
In my mind, there is only one reason to revisit this movie, and that is if you are just the biggest Simpsons fan. If you are just such a huge Simpsons fan that you will take whatever the hell these people do. I want you to cheer at the appearance of Nancy Cartwright and nothing else in this movie.
Oh my god. I did cheer, by the way, at the appearance of Nancy Cartwright, as well as Hank Azaria and Harry Shearer.
Harry Shearer.
This is a movie I genuinely enjoy. So let's start that conversation. Let's start it at a point for you that this movie doesn't land, and I'd like to get started on that conversation. If or you know what, let's make it a little easier on you. Let's narrow your list down a little bit to something you do enjoy about this movie. What do you like about Godzilla 1998?
First off, I am not referring to this creature as Godzilla. Let's get that out of the way.
I think the internet just refers to it as Zilla.
Toho's official name, and this is canon for them,
Yes.
is just Zilla.
Yeah.
In fact, this little bitch lizard got taken out by the real Godzilla in Godzilla Final Wars. It's a fight that lasts less than 10 seconds. Godzilla just blows him up with his nuclear breath. And you know what? This movie serving up that moment for Toho is something that makes it maybe worthwhile. I can't I mean I was shocked at how much I failed to find entertainment value from this movie.
Oh
Because
no.
Roland Emmerich is a guy who knows what a good movie looks like. You know, this was very similar to Battle Los Angeles for me, because the nicest thing I had to say about that, outside of Aaron Eckhart, who is sadly not in this movie, the nicest thing I had to say there is just some of the destruction shots, some of the practical effects here. There is some miniature work that I applaud. I wish that they had taken more nods from Toho, but there is some miniature work, practical explosions. I mean, it's funny. Roland Emmerich goes from aping Spielberg to aping himself, because there's this one shot of Madison Square Garden getting blown up, and that could just be B-roll from Independence Day. And I will say that some of the casting works on paper. I like the idea of getting a guy like Matthew Broderick to be the lead in this movie. I don't think you need an action hero. I mean, what if you had cast Arnold in this role? What was he going to do? Roundhouse kick Godzilla? I don't need an action hero to
Right.
lead this movie. I think it's cool that they got a scientist dweeby type. It's so similar to Tobey Maguire. It's funny. I like Matthew Broderick usually. I would.
Every time I think you're gonna say something positive about this movie, it turns around. That's funny.
Yeah. Look. I
Usually.
look. He has a number of winning performances. The
Oh.
man whom they refer to as the worm guy just didn't worm his way into my heart by the end of this movie. It does not help that he's in simp mode the entire movie, pining after the true monster of this movie, not Godzilla, but Audrey. It's like this movie was written by Andrew Tate or something.
Oh,
Hates women so much.
Oh,
Have I gotten the
God.
ball rolling? Can you take this now, because
I
I
can
don't know.
try. I can try. Here's what I'm gonna say, man. Is like I do like Matthew Broderick. I like him a lot, and I like him in this. I think I don't see that lack of charm that you have with him. I liked what we got from him. Now there was one moment in the movie where I think I'm gonna call it his happening moment. If anybody's ever seen The Happening, there's this scene with Mark Wahlberg where somebody's like accusing him of something. He's like, "No, no, no, I
What?
would
No,
never."
it's
What?
legendary.
No, it's legendary, right? So Matthew Broderick has one of those moments here, where they're talking about him, like giving information to his reporter girlfriend. He's, no, I would never do that. No. And it was funny, right? Like it was laughably
But his
awful. But
performance was like that the whole movie for
see, but
me.
I didn't see that from him the whole
Okay.
movie. I saw classic Matthew Broderick in this. I saw him being this goofy but lovable. I mean, dude. I mean, that's all he was to me this whole movie. His love interest. I didn't have an issue with her per se. I think she should have been written much stronger than she was. No, I don't mean like a strong character. I just mean more clearly defined motivations.
Well, I think she
More,
should have been a stronger character,
no, 100%. Like there's a lot that
played
I
by a
did feel
stronger
her
actress.
character was lacking, but I didn't hate what we got from her. She wasn't a pro for me, but she was sort of middle of the line. As a whole, I think the cast, I liked the cast actually as a whole. All
This
the
is
way
going
over
to
to Hank
mirror our
Azaria.
Warzone episode a lot more closely than I anticipated. So you liked this cast overall.
I did, yeah. I liked pretty much everybody, honestly.
That girl Audrey, man, I'm having a really hard time with what you said about her not being a pro but not being a con. This is like
She's just not a con for me. I didn't have a problem with her.
this is in the fact that Matthew Broderick's whole character arc and motivation is revolves around her something that really hurts his character in this movie overall. It's one of those like American movies that were being made in the 90s that really decided to anchor themselves around a love story. Like we can't just make Godzilla. People won't show up just to see Godzilla.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Godzilla as a character is an evolved species from nuclear fallout. That's something that's consistent through Godzilla's history.
Godzilla was a prehistoric creature similar to a dinosaur. A lot of people think he was a T Rex, but he was some fictional relative to
Right,
the T Rex family, let's say.
right,
One that was reawakened by nuclear testing,
right.
right?
Okay,
Famously, Godzilla has always been a metaphor for nuclear destruction.
right,
And you can take that and just make him a metaphor for any sort of, you know, godlike disaster. I think the 2014 version was really just trying to do something akin to a natural disaster movie
right.
with that
Yeah,
version. But I think that's something that Americans are always going to run into. The Japanese are the only society on this planet that has ever been victim to nuclear destruction. And this is why Godzilla is a he has a profound meaning to them. And I'm not saying that Americans don't have the right to make a Godzilla movie.
absolutely. Right.
I'm just saying, like, to the flippant manner in which Roland Emmerich and his team of yucksters went about bringing this character to his first American release, it just, there was a seriously offensive attitude on display here. And that's not a card I like to pull because you can accuse a lot of my let's say favorite remakes or reinterpretations of doing the same thing. I get that Roland Emmerich wanted to do his own thing, but he clearly thinks Godzilla is stupid. And we've kind of talked about this before, contempt for the source material. Would
Right.
you agree that Roland Emmerich's contempt for this source material is on display?
Yes, I would. No, I mean it's clear, and while I think there was some influence put in from things of the time. This is during Jurassic Park craze. So I understand the desire to do a little bit more of a dinosaur type look if that's what's popular in that time. But even going off of that, it's very clear that the design of this character was meant to. There were meant to be things that reminded you of Godzilla, almost like, hey, I'll throw you a bone. Let's throw some back spikes on there, or let's do whatever we need to do to remind you every once in a while that this is supposed to be Godzilla. But no, I mean it is. It's Super Mario Brothers level of contempt for the source material. But I want to answer that second question that you posed to me about whether or not I think it's an issue or whether it's a problem for me. And I hate to say it, but no, it's not. Here's my thought process on it. I happen to be a fan of a movie called Shin Godzilla. Shin Godzilla is a
Oh
movie
yeah.
that was made in Japan that changed up the design of Godzilla quite tremendously. While there were some things that remained consistent, Godzilla looked almost unrecognizable. You'd only know it's Godzilla from body shape alone. And even body shape, he had some tiny little arms on him for a good bit of that movie. I thought that was a slightly more egregious redesign. Not because I didn't like it. I would love to have a figure of Shin Godzilla in my house. It's incredible. But it just felt, this movie feels so disconnected from the Japanese version of the character, or I guess you could call Godzilla a character, the creature, that
He's
I
a
don't know
character.
that.
That's the thing. He's
Yeah,
a character.
he
He has
no, and
characteristics, and
but
he has
see,
a
that's the
personality.
thing.
I mean,
I
but
think he was made more of a character in this movie than he had been in a lot of the movies that were coming out in the 90s around this time. I have championed myself a fan of the 90s Japanese Godzilla movies and the late 80s Japanese Godzilla movies, and a lot of them. But this treated Godzilla more like a sympathetic character than any of those movies were doing around this time.
that's kind of the funny thing that, I mean, that misses the point. And I don't know what the movie gets out of having a sympathetic creature. Like, there's nothing done with that. I mean, if are we supposed to feel sorry for this thing as it's being shot down? I mean, this is not King Kong. There is no pathos to this creature. I mean, we learned that it's a father, and I guess there's a moment of sympathy you could feel for it, but I don't understand what kind of payoff that's supposed to have for the audience to feel sorry for this thing as it gets shot down. The tone here is so crazy all over the place. Like, you're supposed to feel sorry for this thing,
Mhm.
and then you cut to this typical disaster movie ending of everybody cheering and high-fiving, and Matthew Broderick gets the girl, and I can't wait for her to screw him over again for whatever scoop she can land. King Kong is the main character, is the star of that movie. Like, Godzilla or Zilla or whatever you want to call this creature barely has any sort of presence in this film. Not that I felt. And he doesn't even get to do much of anything. The army destroys more of New York than he does. He doesn't knock down one building that we see.
Well, no, so he causes a lot of destruction, but a lot of it is through evasion. Because, and I think that's what makes this version of Godzilla so interesting to me, is because he's portrayed in the story and with the way that it progresses as a creature that's just trying to do what any creature would do. It's trying to find an ideal environment to survive, to reproduce. The creature doesn't know he's causing this kind of destruction, but he is. And so then you have this two sides of things, right? Where you understand why the military is trying to take this thing down, but you're kind of like, oh man, like, I mean, he's just trying to do his thing, like, why you gotta bother him. So it's like, I enjoy that aspect of the movie, because I actually disagree with you at the end. I can agree with you that this movie has tones all over the place. I think that's a problem with a lot of pre 9/11 destruction movies, and even somewhat post 9/11 destruction movies, where
I
it's
think it
like,
got worse after 9/11, to be
well,
honest.
my thought process is this, like, before 9/11, I feel like people just saw destroying buildings like, oh yeah, I mean, like, it's just taking down buildings, not thinking there's probably hundreds, if not thousands of people currently in those buildings or around that are being crushed and destroyed. And the next scene is our characters joking, and joking about it. But I will say I disagree with you on the ending, because what it felt like to me was that everybody else, everybody in the military, everybody from, who doesn't understand this creature. I think Matthew Broderick, they established the fact that he understands this creature a lot more than everybody else does. And as that creature is laying there dying, he's having this very, like, serious kind of somber moment where, he's looking it in the eyes as it's dying right there. And everybody else is celebrating it, but he's not celebrating it if you see him. I mean,
But
he really just doesn't, he returns to normal because it's not going to affect him that heavily, but in a way, that scene acknowledges that he knows that this is just a creature that was trying to go about its life, and it sucks that we had to kill it.
but Matthew Broderick is not Fay Ray, man. This is not a story of that
I
relationship.
don't know that he has to be, though.
then I still stand by what I say about there not being a payoff.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is going to be the opinion that most people are going to have. The payoff is obviously just not there for some people, or they would have more people would be talking about it in their positive reviews, and they just simply aren't, from what I'm reading, or their negative reviews. So while I disagree with you, I can understand your perspective because I think it's the exact way that most of the audience feels about this movie.
And I guess I don't understand, if this is supposed to be a sympathetic creature, why did they go with a design that is so anti-expression? Like, this Godzilla cannot express or emote anywhere close to the level of the traditional Toho design. I mean, I don't understand why they couldn't just make him look like a T-Rex. You want to make Jurassic Park? Like, what is with this like mongoloid take they have on the dinosaur family? Because he's not even a dinosaur, he's an iguana.
I mean, I like how it looks, honestly. I thought you're right about the emoting part. I think he doesn't show. You can't really see any emotion on this creature's face until it's literally dying. Um, I don't know. I just felt it more from the actions than anything. I mean, it's trying to run away from the military as it's shooting it. It's not really going after anybody until it has to. It was just. It felt to me like they were playing it like a lizard grew to massive size and was getting shot at by the American military. You wouldn't see it emoting in the same way. It would just, you'd feel bad for it because you're like, oh man, like the same way you'd feel bad if you watched a video online of some dude killing a snake in his backyard. You'd be like, man, I get why you killed the snake, but it's like you don't want to see an animal die. It's I felt like that was this for me in one big, very very long movie. That's what this felt like.
2+ hours.
Now, look, and look, I've been doing nothing but praising this movie so far. I do want to throw this in there because one thing that I can understand is that this movie is extremely long. It feels very long. I read a letterbox review that said this is objectively the longest movie ever made. I wouldn't go that far. But what I would say is that even I, somebody who enjoyed this movie and had a great experience watching it, at one point was like, wow, this is really long. And it feels very long. Not in a torturous way for me. I'm sure for you it wasn't fun. But I thought I was that is a detraction point for me. I do think this movie could have benefited from being a little shorter.
I mean, it has two scenes where they lure this thing out with fish and chase after it.
Right.
Do those scenes work for you? I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, so you enjoy those scenes. You enjoy the choppers chasing him through the city, and like Zilla is a master of disguise. Like, he knows how to hide in plain sight. Like, he just pops out from behind buildings, and at some point it said that he is hiding in one of these buildings, right? That's where he goes.
No, they said he must be hiding in one of the buildings, but it was when he was in like the subway systems. They didn't think about him being in the subway system, so they said we think he may be hiding in one of the buildings. But yeah.
How stupid does Roland Emmerich think I am? I have been in a subway. I know how big it is. There's like the idea that he could hide in there without being detected. And they try to be cute with it. They send military people down into the subway and they turn around just as he walks by in the tunnel behind them. And it's ironically, the man who thinks that Godzilla is stupid is the person who makes the Godzilla film that insults your intelligence the most.
I don't know. I don't feel the same way about it. I thought the way that it was. I'll say like that scene. I mean, like it was kind of silly, yeah. But I don't know that the whole thing insulted your intelligence because if they would have made it seem like he was in the subway systems and there was no indication of it, that would have been the dumbest thing I've ever seen. But everywhere, like they are canvassing this gigantic area of destroyed debris and basically what was the subway system is now completely destroyed from this character burrowing into the ground and destroying everything around it. So while I understand what you said about that particular scene, I do enjoy those scenes where Godzilla is running away from these choppers, or where they're drawing him out, because this is what they're trying to do with the character in this movie. They're very much trying to portray it as a
A
creature of
bitch.
circumstance. No,
As a
a
bitch.
creature of circumstance.
Okay.
He's not coming to the city to destroy the city. He's coming there to create an environment that's going to be best to live off of, and it makes sense to do that, in my opinion.
Okay, you love Halloween. Let me make you a comparison.
Oh, geez.
Imagine if there's a Halloween reboot where Michael Myers returns home because he's ready to be a daddy, and the mean citizens of Haddonfield chase him around. Like they lure him out with jack-o'-lanterns, and then they start shooting at him, and it becomes a little chase through the neighborhood. And every once in a while, he pops out of the bushes to stab people.
See, but to me, that's not the type of character Godzilla is. Like, Godzilla is not a Michael Myers type character, and that's what makes Godzilla interesting. He's not coming to a city with the intention of murdering everybody. Even in the original Godzilla films, it's not really what he's doing. It just happens to be what he ends up doing. And so if Michael Myers was a character, was a no, I see, that's the thing, right? If Michael Myers, in a way, and you're gonna hate me for this, I'm ready for this show is about to be over, folks. You ready for this? In a way, the way that they treat him in this movie is kind of similar to the idea of how they treat him in Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. The idea that he's, at this point, all he is trying to do in Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 is get his family back together. That is literally the story of that movie. It takes the character in a completely different route, but you know what? That story worked for me in that movie, and it does the same in this. To me, this is a character, this is a creature who is trying to survive the way any creature would, but he just happens to be ginormous and happens to stumble upon a city that's full of people that he's trampling on, and buildings that he is accidentally destroying. We still get the destruction, but it's in a different way until we get to the latter end of the movie. When, he's getting attacked and he's attacking back, then he's really knocking shit over and he's destroying shit. But before that, he's just destroying shit because he's just trying to make a home. That's all he's trying to do. He's trying to nest in New York City, the city that never sleeps, as the little title at the bottom of the screen says when they make it to New York City. So I don't know. It just works for me.
For our podcast, I would have shut off the movie after that title. After that title card, man.
I will say that was a little ridiculous. I did laugh. I did chuckle out loud when I saw the city that never sleeps come up in like military font across the bottom of the screen. That was a little silly.
And once again, you try to use my love of Rob Zombie against me.
Look,
it's
hey
twisted.
Man, hey,
it's perverse.
They're both creatures of circumstance, man. That's all I'm saying.
Michael Myers is still a killer.
No, and you're right. It's treated differently, but I think if anything, isn't that more egregious?
No, it's cool. Like, I mean, you get this visceral sort of thrill that cuts both ways, no pun intended, of when you see people
That's good.
going after Michael in those Rob Zombie movies, and the way he fights back. It's brutal, it's vengeful, it's mean, but you also do actually have the opportunity to see the human side of that character. I'm telling you, man, like I at no point want to see a Godzilla movie where he's running away from the military and has to hide behind buildings when he's not busy dry humping them as he is in the backdrop behind me.
That's a little too. That's like one of the coolest shots of any of these Godzilla movies that you have right behind you, right there.
We really watched a different movie. If you walked away thinking that this was anything other than laughable, he is dry humping the Chrysler Building. He's having his way with it. Okay, he's hormonal. He's about to be a father, and he's trying to rub one out. I don't know what
he's
else.
Not. This is. I did not expect this to be a Warzone episode, but apparently, I'm gonna have to change the graphics. This is a not that bad Warzone episode over Godzilla. Okay. Let me toss this up to you, because I think this is a valid complaint, even though it's something that doesn't detract majorly from the movie for me. I will admit in our discussion about the characters that a complaint that I definitely understood, I sympathize with, and I agree with to a certain extent, is that a good amount of the characters are pretty generic, whether I like them or not. Um, they are generic characters in this movie. To throw something at you to sort of throw some goodwill as something I didn't like about this movie. I would assume this is something you agree with, no?
I think they're worse than generic. I
Oh
mean,
no.
they're annoying. These
Oh,
people
so
are these people are
they annoy
mooks,
you.
okay? They're
Oh.
fanooks. They're the most gabagool. Hey, I'm walking here. You talking to me? Fucking shitheads. I okay. I
See,
think
now you just sound like Hollywood elite.
I'm getting more. These are coastal elites, okay? These are people working for the news. Spare me.
Oh my god. That's
I
funny.
uh and I'm sure that's how Roland Emmerich directed them. Like, yeah, you know the Robert De Niro, yeah?
I'm starting to think you just have a hatred for European directors that direct American movies. You first Roland Emmerich, then first Lexi Alexander, then Roland Emmerich.
I didn't even know she was European. Where's she from?
Germany.
She's from Germany?
Yeah.
Oh, it kind of explains some of the visual imagery. Before I was wondering, is Jigsaw supposed to look like a Nazi scientist? And now I know he's definitely supposed to look like a Nazi scientist. Very cool. Honestly, that makes
Oh
me like
man.
it a little bit more.
Oh,
So
there we go.
let me actually let me throw you a bone. Let me do some goodwill of my own, and I
Okay.
will I will mention something that I should have mentioned before as being probably the thing I like most about this movie. Jean Reno.
Oh,
Okay,
he's great.
I love this guy. He is such a great presence. He's a he's huge in France, but I think most people's exposure to him on this side of the pond would be Leon the Professional. Just a
Yes.
fabulous movie,
Very good.
wonderfully entertaining movie, and he is such a big part of why that movie endures the way it does to me. Everybody talks about Gary Oldman and Natalie Portman, but I think that movie could fall apart without somebody of his charm and his mystique.
Agreed.
Now, I think he's given some dumb shit to do in this movie. I think the Elvis routine, as I'm going to call it,
Oh
it
no.
it's okay. You like that? I'm guessing that you like that.
Yeah, I liked it.
You liked it. Okay.
Oh, wait, we were
Just
agreeing here. Sir, we were
we
agreeing
were
here.
agreeing.
Let's go
I
back
was
to the
going to
agreeing
say
part.
I was going to say when he's allowed to do what he does best,
Mhm.
he brings the only bit of gravitas to this movie. Like he's as underused as Bryan Cranston was in that 2014 version to me. But he plays a huge part in the climax, and that is definitely something that helps. Even though I can't say that I was with the movie at all by that point, it was still something I could give the movie and something I'll give to you, I guess. I think I've run out of things I can compliment about this film.
I understand. I think, yeah. I mean, he was great in this. I do think I think we could have benefited from more of him. I sort of like how they set him up to be this like the way that they were portraying his mysterious side was like this guy's like probably a villain of some kind. Like you're thinking that for a good bit of the movie, and he turns out to be probably like the biggest help for. No, he turns out to be the biggest help for our
He's
characters.
basically the hero.
He's basically the hero of the movie. He's the one that
Maybe
keeps
he should
everything
have been the
together.
hero of
And
the movie.
no, I think he was. I think when he was being used well, he was used very well. I do think the part that I really kind of disconnected was some of like I, I can't even call it like slapstick, but just like the goofy moments with like all the French dudes, when they're in like a hotel or they're in a van spying on people. It's just like some of that stuff doesn't work as well.
Hey, you call
Um,
this coffee? Hey,
yeah,
hey.
that was that's where I kind of, but even in those scenes I still liked him. I didn't have any issues with him. I think both his performance and his character in this movie are huge positives, and something that I think anybody could take away positively from their experience watching this movie.
I think it's hilarious that the French Secret Service are the ones behind all this.
Yeah,
That's something that only Roland Emmerich would have come up with.
I like
But
it.
I almost liked, I was happy for him. I was happy for him that he got to bring his own culture to this production, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I almost wanted him to go off and make your French Godzilla movie. You know, I think that's something I would have rather have seen rather than him try to evoke New York Americana, right? That being said, he treats his own people as cartoonishly as he treats New Yorkers. So it's just his sensibilities, it's his style. And after the success of Independence Day, which is also full of cartoonish characters,
Well, I want to ask you about something, if I could, about Godzilla, because something that I took away from this movie, and I don't think you're going to agree with me here, but there's two things I kind of want to put in together. Even though they're separate from each other, I think they complement each other in this film. And I think the scope of this movie, with the sets and the set pieces and the design of everything, and I don't know if you're going to agree with me on that or disagree with me on that. I think a lot of people's complaint is that this movie is very dark to hide the CGI. I don't really have a problem with that.
I actually
But
don't.
what do you think?
I'm inclined to agree. I do enjoy the overall ambiance of this film. He copied Spielberg's homework, and you know, if you're gonna steal, steal from the best.
Yeah.
And people make fun of the rain, and I actually enjoy that about the movie. I like to think that that the plot of Seven is happening on the other side of the city.
That's a very, yeah, it probably is, honestly.
I mean, when it comes to like ambiance, it's like an interesting distinction to make because I think the way he directs performances is really hammy, and the CGI just did not turn out well enough to conjure up some of the majesty that I think he was aiming for. But I think you're right. I think a lot of those aerial shots of the city are really cool. I do like the opening scene on the boat before you see Godzilla. You know, that's where he's
Yeah.
taking a nod from Jaws, a little movie called Jaws.
Never
But
heard of
hey,
that
it
one.
works. You know, Steven Spielberg didn't show the shark and Jaws very much, and I kind of wish that Roland Emmerich had refrained from showing the monster here too much. Let me toss it back to you. What if this was more of a hide and seek movie, so to speak? What if you didn't see as much of the movie? What if this was like more like Cloverfield or something like that?
I would have liked sort of a balance between what we got and what you described. I think that would have made this movie like a whole new level of awesome for me because I've already said that I really like the aspect of Godzilla sort of being just being a creature who's just trying to exist. And so the idea of him not being seen too much was really cool. And what they did in the movie with it, by the way, was really cool up until, that certain point. I think you can even agree that, up until he makes like there's a certain point in this movie where they just decided to stop hiding him. You see pieces of him through like a big chunk of the beginning of this movie. I'll say a big chunk of the movie since it's very long. It starts in the boat. You don't really see any aspect. You don't really see a lot of Godzilla there, and then he shows up in New York and comes up on the dock. You really don't see a whole lot of him there. Cool scene, by the way. Where he's kind of treading through water, coming at that guy out on the docks in New
It
York
would
there.
be cool if it weren't for
Um,
this old geezer.
no.
You just highlighted a huge thing about this movie, the dichotomy between what could have been a really cool, almost epic moment. I agree, like the first shots of him coming out of the water should land. They should be cool, even if it's not the Godzilla I want. And let me try to make something clear. Even though I set aside time to talk about how infuriatingly off the mark this movie was in adapting Godzilla, I really tried to watch it as just a monster movie. I really tried to watch it as its own thing.
So let me throw something back at you here that is a big audience issue. It's something I read in a lot of reviews, and it's truth probably the most common thing we've ever seen on this show as a complaint for a movie, and it's the use of CGI. Um, I think a lot of people expected this to be a man in a suit. I don't know why they would
What by the
expect that.
when it was
Um,
coming out?
yes, or like even afterwards, I think people didn't adjust their expectations, and that my perspective on it is this: I think people wanted to see a Godzilla movie, reasonably so, I guess. It's called Godzilla, but I don't think they wanted to see a CGI Godzilla with a different look. I think they wanted to see a dude in a suit destroying some buildings, and that's what they wanted to see. And I think that's what they still want to see to an extent. I think the new movies have sort of saved that a little bit. And I'll say, by the way, I love the design of Godzilla now. I think it's an incredible design. In fact, I think the new Godzilla is probably my favorite look for Godzilla. This new like 2014 Godzilla King of Monsters era that we have now. Um,
My
but
favorite Godzilla design is actually the Heisei era, which was the most
okay,
recent
yeah,
version up until this point. And that's the weird thing. Like I watch those like when people make fun of the guy in a suit thing, they're clearly referencing like those early Godzilla movies, like
oh yeah,
Showa era
100%,
movies.
yeah.
And yeah, those haven't aged well. I don't think the special effects of most movies around that time have aged well. Like those effects got much more sophisticated.
100%, yeah.
And I really want your opinion on this. Do you really think that audiences would prefer this CGI creation over the practical effects of the Godzilla movies at that time?
Do I? Well, it's tough, man, because like this is like the era where a lot of movies started going in that CGI direction because it helps you complete a vision more accurately, or at this time, what was more accurately than practical effects could. The amount of destruction that's in this movie, I don't think they could have delivered in an American blockbuster film without the use of CGI. And I truthfully
If
don't think it ages that poorly.
oh,
Some scenes
okay.
do. Some scenes do. Don't get me wrong. But there are I was expecting my rewatch to just be me laughing at CGI the whole time, and I wasn't. I think a lot of scenes hold up really well. But there are scenes that do stick out, just like any movie that would come out. This is not like Spawn, like I think it's pretty high quality what we get through most of the film.
Like I'm having this like real disconnect where you're talking about the level of destruction on display in this movie. I like this is so small scale and so much less satisfying than any typical Godzilla movie. Like some of those movies go hog wild. Like some of those movies are insane. And I don't think
Right.
you could do a movie like Godzilla Final Wars. But some of the more restrained ones or some of the ones with, like the traditional monsters like Godzilla versus Mothra
Right.
or something like that. Like Americans weren't ready for Space Godzilla, but they were ready for something like Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. And I watched that the other day, and I just like it's immaculate to me. Let's talk about another kaiju monster, right? The Gamera movies were also crossing over to America at the time. The
Yeah.
new Heisei Gamera trilogy, and that movie was made with a fraction of this movie's budget, and it delivered something that holds the test of time more than any frame of this movie can.
When criticizing special effects, you really have to look at when it was made, because even in our Terminator episode, if a movie was made today with the level of CGI and what we saw in Terminator 3, it'd be laughably bad because we've advanced past that point now. This is very early CGI. Nothing in this movie takes me out of the moment. No, none of the CG takes me out of the film, disconnects me from what I'm seeing on the screen, makes me feel like I'm watching something overtly fake. It makes me feel like I'm watching a movie from 1998. And I think that's where the disconnect is from me to the audience, where, you know, again, this isn't Spawn for me. Like, Spawn is a movie that takes you out of the moment because of how bad the use of computer generated imagery is. This movie doesn't do that for me. I didn't have a problem with it. I thought there were parts that did age very poorly, just like in The Phantom Menace, just like in Terminator 3, just like in Hulk. Um, but I also, in the Hulk episode, praised the use of the CGI that was good. because there were moments that were very good in that. And I think if they use CGI the same way now, it would be laughed off the screen. So I think that's where I'm sort of coming from in this. I'm not going to tell you that it holds up today. Like, when I say holds up, I mean for an enjoyable viewing experience. I don't mean for like, oh yeah, this looks like it could be made today. Absolutely not. It doesn't.
But it looks worse than movies that came before it. Like, let's compare it to Jurassic Park. I mean, that scene with the T Rex, that iconic scene that Roland Emmerich is chasing all throughout this movie, does look like it could be made today, and that's the gold standard. And
I'll agree
does
with
this
that.
have to be the gold standard? No, but you go into how Jurassic Park was made, and a lot of it was CGI, but a lot of it was also practical effects. You know, they
Right.
brought in Stan Winston's team to create these amazing models that are really like great accomplishments for the dinosaurs of that movie. And there was some kind of cool animatronic work with some of the velociraptors. By the way, I'm going to
Yeah.
call them velociraptors.
Yeah, no, it's
Uh,
fair.
yeah,
Babyzillas.
Baby Zillas. That's a good one. Baby Zilla.
God damn it. Oh man.
And I, it's funny. I can actually compliment a lot of things about the Baby Zilla sequence. Or actually really like the design of this nest, all
Yeah.
about Madison Square Garden, and the scene where the high beams turn on and you see how many eggs there are in the score. Very Spielbergian, but it works. It
Yeah.
lands. If it wasn't devoted to an idea that I just absolutely hate, then I think I could actually get on board with this. After they think they've killed Godzilla, I really do check out of the movie, and I don't get back into it until Godzilla himself comes back. And that chase up around New York, I mean, some parts of it are really hokey, but it's actually Godzilla chasing our main characters, and they have to try to survive him rather than the rest of this movie, which is Godzilla trying to survive other people. And that is actually something that I did come to see from a Godzilla movie. So it's a little bittersweet. It's a little, it's too little too late, but I got like the closest I get to my monster movie fix comes right at the end.
What I will definitely say about the Babyzilla sequence is that I think we could have benefited from a good chunk of that sequence really being cut down. I think the chase and stuff. I get why they want to put it in there. Again, I think they were trying to sort of invoke the same type of thing that the sequence in the Velociraptor sequence in Jurassic Park did, and I get why they'd want to do that. I get why they'd want to remind you of such a sequence, even though it's hard to do it better. What I will say though is that I do also agree with you that this movie does pick back up after that. I even had a moment in the Velociraptor sequence where I was like, how long is this part going to go for? Like, I get it, like they want to try to build this suspense up, but like there is none. And I wish they would have noticed that during at least the editing process of this movie, because we really don't need as much context after that sequence. All we need to know is that, hey, there's a ton of these things and they're about to leave Madison Square Garden and you need to blow this bitch up. That's really all we need to know. A little bit of
Right.
chase here, a little bit of chase there, and then we're done. I think we got too much of that sequence. I'll agree with that. Um, but I'm glad you were able to acknowledge that the end of this movie is very what you're not exactly what you're looking for, but some of it.
It's not very anything, but it is the closest. The idea of Godzilla being a dad is not new. Godzilla has
Right.
uh spawn or offspring in it's because you keep bringing up Spawn. That must be the reason that was my first word of choice. But no, he has offspring in every era of Godzilla films.
Right.
And the name for that offspring seems to change. I always just call him Godzilla Junior. It's this baby miniature version of Godzilla, and there are actual Godzilla movies where like their relationship is kind of the heart of the movie. And that's something that this movie lacks more than anything to me is heart. Like they didn't come up with this idea of the Godzilla babies out of anything other than chasing after other better movies. And I think that's really the key here, man. Like there is nothing really done with them, is there? I mean, they're a little device for a cute chase scene where Matthew Broderick trips them with gumballs, and Audrey gets to break her story because I was really rooting for her, man. I was really worried if she was going to get her big break.
You know what's kind of funny about what you just said? I wrote down in my notes, did Ferris Bueller just home alone a bunch of baby Godzillas? Because that's exactly what happens at one point in this movie.
Kevin McAllister is way more creative than any of this.
No, it's just like the bead sequence in Home Alone 2. It's like it's exactly the same thing. I thought it was hilarious. Oh, now the use of these baby Godzillas was not completely useless because it did spawn a very popular and a very well received Fox Kids show called Godzilla the Series. That last Godzilla we see at the end of this movie is supposed to be the Godzilla in this cartoon, which weirdly enough has a much better reception than the movie that it's based off of, which is usually very different. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've seen it time and time again, the Ewoks cartoon and things like that, droids. Stuff just usually doesn't work. There's the opposite for this. I'd be interested to see what you'd think about that if you haven't seen that cartoon.
I've never seen it.
Okay.
I've never seen it.
I'd be interested if you'd ever watch that. But honestly, I mean, we've tackled a lot of things about this movie so far. We've talked a lot about the things we like and don't like, the things that the audience really doesn't like. I want to know if you have anything else that you want to cover before we kind of wrap our conversation up. Oh, sorry, our war.
Either he can breathe fire or he can't. Don't do this. He blows on a couple of trucks and fire erupts and it goes in the direction of the people he's breathing at. He does that twice in this movie, and I really thought I was losing my mind. Like I thought the CGI was glitching or something. Like, wait, the fire's not coming out of his mouth. And then you read online that Roland Emmerich didn't think it would be realistic to have his giant mutant iguana breathing fire. Holy shit, man. That's what I wrote down in my notes. I said fire breathing. Holy shit.
I'll agree with you. I think they should have just pulled the trigger and just given him either fire breath or the atomic, laser beam, whatever you want to say. Mm-hmm. I think they should have given him something. I can understand a perspective of not doing it, so I would agree that either go for it or don't go for it. I think doing it half-assed comes across as half-assed, and I will agree that it came across half-assed. It just wasn't that part was not executed well. I get what they were going for, so I don't want to say it was awful, but it wasn't great.
What's the logic though?
I think the idea was just that his roar was so ferocious that it was causing the cars to, the cars and trucks or whatever else was in the way to sort of start to move in that direction and come. So as they smashed together, they exploded. I think that's the idea of it. I don't, again, not
that
perfect.
Explanation makes it worse for me.
Oh no. Well, I don't know. Maybe maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the intention was there. That's what I saw it as. Again, I can't really defend that. I just can't.
We heard from both sides. And I think we've both made our cases, and now it's time to get into the final verdict.
Yes, final verdict's time for anybody who is coming to the show for the first time or just has an awful memory. We have 4 potential ratings that a movie can get on our show. It's either that bad, it's not that bad, it's actually good, or it's actually great. I think people kind of know which general direction we're both going here, but I would love to hear your final verdict on Godzilla from 1998. Roland Emmerich's Godzilla.
This movie has the entertainment value of Waterworld, but instead of ruining its own idea, it really spits in the face of one of my favorite franchises for a long time, of all time, I mean. And people could be watching Godzilla versus Space Godzilla. People could be watching Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla or the terror of Mechagodzilla. There's a rich history, a lovely history of Godzilla films produced by Toho. I mean, that thing outpaces the James Bond franchise, and every single one of them has entertainment value except for this one. This one, this is the one that was made without any understanding of why this character's popular, any understanding of why Jurassic Park was popular, and any understanding of why anybody would ever want to watch a movie. Okay, it's I'm gonna let that sit.
Jesus
So
Christ.
while
Oh
I'm
no.
not being bold here, while I'm not taking a grand stand, and while I'm definitely kicking a movie while it's down, people in 1998 were right about this one, and they're still right. Godzilla 1998 is that bad. Honestly, I would give it less than a two.
I think even at less than a two, right?
Yeah, I give it a 1.5.
1.5.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is gonna be fun. All right. Well, give us your star rating. So I'll give mine at the end of my spiel here. I am gonna do a lot of hot dogging and grandstanding over here. I really enjoyed this movie. As I said at the beginning, I really don't I got a perspective on somebody who doesn't like this movie, so I can understand the perspective a lot more. And I could certainly understand, and I always have been able to understand why somebody who is a very loyal Godzilla supporter does not like this movie. I can get it. You know, if they change things about your favorite character and they put it on the screen, I understand not being completely open to what they're deciding to do with it, nor liking what they're deciding to do with it. At the end of the day, though, all of the things that bother everybody else just don't seem to bother me at all. Besides my issues with the length, some of the generic characters, and definitely some scenes that should have been taken out, I don't have a problem with this movie at all. In fact, I really enjoy this movie. This is a movie I would gladly tell people I enjoy, and it's a movie that I would be told I'm crazy for enjoying, just as many movies that I've brought on this show so far. But it's a movie I would tell people I enjoy nonetheless. And you know, as fun as it is to joke about how some of the bad things turned out with this, and the audience response, and you know, the jabs at Roger Ebert and Roger Ebert taking jabs right back at it, it's funny. But I got a Godzilla movie that was different than anything else that Godzilla has put out before, and it has is completely different than anything Godzilla has done since. Rightly so. They learned this movie didn't make a whole lot of money, and it didn't get a whole lot of people that loved it. But I'm one of those people that really enjoys this. So at the end of the day, I'm gonna have to say that Godzilla is actually good. I love this movie. There are things I don't love about it, so I can't go full 4 stars on this. But I'm gonna give it a 3.5. I really enjoy this, and it's a movie that if you're willing to accept the changes, if you're willing to accept the things that they attempted to do with this, if you heard some of my points and you said, "Hey, you know, that's kind of a good point," give this movie a watch. Just make sure you carve out a big chunk of time to do it.
No. All right, guys. Thanks for joining in on
God
a
damn
really
it.
different type of episode from us. I mean, God, talk about polar opposites. I mean, I remember what I really thought you were just gonna go in like a guilty pleasure direction, like oh, I know this is bad. I still have fun with it.
No, dude, I just have no. I think I don't. I think everybody has one movie in them, whether they know it or not, that's bad that they don't see as bad. And that's this for me. You know, I've been able to admit for every other movie that we've covered that's been this degree of hatred, right? Like I've been able to acknowledge that it's not great. I don't think this is great, but I don't think it's bad at all. And I'm really surprised that many people do. I will say though, the idea of like a green color or in a green color palette surrounding Godzilla is something that definitely needs to be explored more. Green atomic breath would be awesome. I love that color green that they use for this. I just wanted to throw that in there before we left today. That I think a lot of the design choices that they made in regards to marketing this movie and the color palette were solid. But yeah, this was different, man. This really I might have to rework some of the graphics for this. This felt like us going to war. It felt like a like
And unlike Godzilla, I'm not running away. All right. I'm standing my ground, and you can
neither of
fly
us
your
did.
helicopters at me. You can fire your torpedoes at me. Uh no, I mean this was a brawl, much like the classic Toho originals. You know, this is our King Kong versus Godzilla, basically.
Oh, we've
And
never disagreed to this extent on a show before.
God no.
And
Dude,
like we went to like we had our back and forth on Punisher Warzone, but
yeah.
this was this
I
was
was so
interesting.
scared you were going to give an actually great.
I
I
couldn't go
was
that far because at the end, I can't give a movie an actually great that I fully admit I felt the length of. You know what I mean? If you
yeah.
feel a movie, you feel like there are more grays on your hair at the end of the movie than the beginning. You can't give it an actually great, but actually good. I'm gonna settle on that. I'm gonna stand strong with that.
Hey, I'm glad this movie has at least one fan.
There's actually a big online community for this movie now, and I hope
No,
it
there's
continues to
not.
grow. There is,
Oh my god.
yeah. There's an online community for this movie and for this version of Godzilla, and I hope one day it continues to grow, just like the seeds being planted of a Super Mario Brothers renaissance of that 1993 movie. I hope the same thing happens with this. Um, I
Would you
really think
want
it
a
deserves that love.
sequel? Do you think that it should get a
Um,
sequel?
I don't think it should ever get a sequel. What I would like to see is somebody do like a remake of this as like a, maybe like a World Two Godzilla type thing. You know, like a multiverse of Godzillas. I'd like to see that, but like not. I don't want to see this exact version. Like I said, there are changes I'd make. I'd make the design somewhat half of this and half of like the Godzilla that everybody loves. I'd kind of take those two designs and somehow kind of put them together. Definitely would have some sort of destructive breath powers coming out of this guy. Cause I just think that makes Godzilla cooler personally. I think one of the things that made me really want to see, like I bought Godzilla King of Monsters the day it came out, not having seen it in theaters, not having heard any reactions about it, just because of the shot they had in the trailer where he did the atomic breath into the sky. I was like, yeah, oh yeah, I'm gonna buy that movie. Um, so
Yeah,
there
I
are
don't know.
things that I
That's
would do differently, but I would like to see this style of movie remade, so or almost like a reimagining of Godzilla '98. That's
a
what I would want to see.
reimagining of a reimagining.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right, folks, get on it. Connor wants
I'll write it.
his Godzilla 98 squared pronto.
I will
Expect it
I will
on my
write
desk by
I will
Monday.
write it. I will do whatever I can do to make it happen. But I want to make it happen. I want to make it
All
happen.
right. Okay, y'all. Well, it's great because if you hate this movie, then I think you'll enjoy this episode. And if you love it, I think you'll also get a kick out of it too. I mean, good luck finding another pro Godzilla 98 podcast out there.
Yeah, I'm not anticipating many comments or messages agreeing with me after this one.
Hey, but I stand by you. Okay. It's like that thing about free speech. Like, just the way somebody has the right to deny the Holocaust, you have the right to
Please
champion
don't put me
Godzilla
in that
99.
category. Don't put me in that category, you son of a bitch. I don't belong there. Oh God, I do sort of feel like the guy on the corner with the tinfoil hat. That's just like, please, somebody listen to me. I don't understand what's wrong with you people.
Hey,
Oh man.
now I think now let me say this as a closing note before we wrap this up. If I had never heard of Godzilla before and I watched this movie for the first time, I think it could have the legs to be a guilty pleasure. I don't think I would ever honestly call this a good movie. I think I would compliment aspects of the production,
Right.
but it's a mega blockbuster. Like I guess I don't feel like giving credit to the movie overall just because it has the resources to get the best people. But I do think it could have been a guilty pleasure. And who knows? I mean, after our Punisher Warzone episode, I rewatched Punisher Warzone. I didn't like it more, which you know.
I think you hated it more.
I did hate it more.
Oh
The more
man.
seriously I take that movie, the more I hate it. And I was really trying to figure out if there was a good movie that I just missed. That's not the effect that it
Oh
had.
man. Yeah, you know, I'm curious to see if this ever happens again on this show, at least like
Oh, I
sometime
think it
soon,
will. I
because
think it will. Yeah.
you know I think naturally we're going to disagree on movies. We've seen it before. We've disagreed on you know Alien versus Predator. We've disagreed on the Wolf Man. You know these are things that's not foreign to this show. But I think this level of just being on completely different pages on a movie,
But to be fair,
this is a scale that we've never seen before.
this is like a movie with that kind of charge
Oh,
to it, that
absolutely.
kind of caliber. I mean,
Right.
we should have really prefaced this, but I think everybody knows this is one of those infamous hated movies. Like, this is the kind of movie that this podcast is all about.
Oh yeah.
Controversial to the max, fanboy rage, something that really has the caliber to get people fired up to this day. So, of course, this was going to be the movie to do it. I don't think I was going to get in a fit about nothing but trouble. I don't think that movie has the means to do that. But you put Godzilla in something, or you don't put him in something called Godzilla, and yeah, I think you do have a recipe for disaster, so to speak. But no, I think it was a lot of fun. Honestly, I mean,
Yeah.
we both can respect each other's opinions, and that's what it's about, y'all.
I absolutely will defend Gabe's right to not like this movie, and I know he will defend my right to like this movie. That's what this show is all about. That's what the opinions that we like to bring on the show. Um, we've had quite a bit of people falling on different sides of a movie throughout our history, and that's something we're going to continue to do. Um, uh, I honestly cannot wait until we get another episode where we disagree like this. I kind of want to be on the other side, honestly. I kind of
Yeah,
want to be on the other side of this where I just
where you think
absolutely
it's
hate a movie
terrible
that
and I
you
love it
love.
or
Yeah,
something. No,
yeah.
I'm anticipating that. And who knows, that could happen with our next episode. And I have to say, Connor, if you don't like my next pick, then you must be blind.
Oh man. This is gonna be an interesting bit of time that passes throughout history here on this show. This is a landmark episode in a lot of ways for us, and I think you're right. This is exactly what the show was made for. Us to
I feel good
discuss
about
movies like
this.
this.
I
Yeah,
feel good about this. This was a big development for us. This is baby's first rant or something. This is baby's first spat, I guess. A
yeah.
huge thing for our show. I mean, the more we can hate each other, I think the better, to be
Oh
honest. I think
man,
we'll
I
see
mean,
that in our growth.
oh, 100%. I mean, I do. You know what? I do kind of feel like the kid who's like, "Man, come on! I want to be the bad guy now. I want to be the villain." Because you always say at the beginning of, you said it at the beginning of the Punisher Warzone episode. I'm surprised I didn't hear it here about being painted as a villain. I want to be painted as a villain. Like, come on,
Oh,
paint me as a
I
villain.
felt like the
I'll draw a
hero.
mustache on my face. I don't care.
I felt like the hero. Like, I'm not gonna let people come in and like reappraise Godzilla 1998 without a fight.
In
God
this
damn it.
episode, I will say, I think you are the hero of this episode to the audience. I think that they're going to come out on the other
Well,
side of
we'll
this
see.
thinking that I'm the tinfoil hat man and that you are the rational man trying to get me help, and I just won't take it.
Well, let's turn it to the audience, guys. If you have feelings either way, if you agreed with one
Yeah,
of us, we would love to hear from you. I want to see what the consensus is out there among our fans, among our
yeah,
viewers and listeners. So please let us know. It'd be fun to know, who won more people over, and I just want to get that engagement going with you guys. We want to hear from you, and we want to hear the kind of content that you would like to see more of in the future. Do you like this format of us going to war, or do you want us to go back to being buddies? Do you want us to hug and make up and all of that for the next episode? I'm genuinely curious.
I hope we can for the next episode. We'll find out when we get to it. For now, though, again, thank you everybody for watching the show today. We had a lot of fun talking about this movie. I'm glad I got to get this pick in there. I've been anticipating this one for a while. I've had this lined up for a while, so I'm really excited that we're going to be releasing it to the world. And I think that's the last thing that we have to say. So, Mr. Tice, would you like to take us out, my friend?
All right, I'm Gabezilla.
And I'm well, I called myself Godzilla at the beginning of the episode, so I'm Godzilla.
No, and this is not that bad. Signing out.
Oh,